Welcome to Stay Sharp in Digital Engineering, your trusted guide to navigating the future of digital innovation and products in manufacturing. In this episode, we sit down with PLM expert Michael Finocchiaro, also known as Fino, to explore how AI, emerging startups, and evolving technologies are reshaping the PLM landscape. From industry giants like Dassault and Siemens to bold predictions around quantum computing and digital threads. It's a forward-looking conversation on where PLM is headed next. Let's tune in. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Stay Sharp in Digital Engineering, the podcast about all things digital related to products, manufacturing, engineering, service, and beyond. I'm one of your hosts today, Juliann Grant, and I'm here with my co-host, Jonathan Scott.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Jonathan. Happy to be back.
Yes. No, I'm super excited about today. Today's going to be a lot of fun. Every time we get together with Fino, it's fun. So anyway.
You're giving it away already.
I am. I give it away just like that.
You can't trust them with anything.
Yeah, you know.
It's true.
But anyway, yes. So today we're here to talk about a very interesting topic, and I'm excited to have our guest, Michael Finocchiaro, here with us. So today we're here to talk about how the PLM industry is changing and what we might see in the future. So we've talked about this kind of thing once or twice in the past. But today, things are happening really quickly. There's some, recent news in the PLM industry, people trying to acquire other people. So we wanted to bring an expert on here who knows a lot about the industry to help us sort this out and talk about it. So we have
later.
That's you, man. That's you.
What am I here for?
This is going to be a good one.
All right, take two.
No take. Come on, this is it. Just go for it.
Okay.
Keep rolling. It's like an apocalypse now. After he breaks his stand at the window. Like, oh my God, don't stop rolling, man. I'm moving.
So you've seen and heard the great Michael Finocchiaro, also known as Fino. We're going to address him as Fino today. But he's here to talk to us about the PLM industry. And he publishes an awful lot about this stuff on his LinkedIn profile. Please be sure to follow that. He's got some great content, some really interesting infographics that he publishes that help everyone get on the same page about this industry. Let me tell you a little bit about Fino. He is a Franco-American. So you're in France, right, Michael?
I am in Paris.
Yes. And he's a technology evangelist and a consultant with more than 30 years experience in PLM, digital twins, and engineering software infrastructure. So he's held many senior roles at Dassault Systèmes, IBM, PTC, and now advises leading firms on digital transformation, AI, and competitive strategy across the manufacturing tech stack. So Michael is also the creator of Demystifying PLM and a recognized voice on CAD, digital thread, and agentic AI. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Jonathan.
Yeah, I just want to jump right in because this is going to be a blast.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I'll set the stage a little, right? For a long time, there were really three main players in the PLM market, right? A lot of people talked about the market as kind of a 3+2 for a while. The big three were Siemens, PTC, and Dassault. And the +2 were SAP and Oracle, right? Now, SAP had Engineering Control Center, or ECC, and Oracle had Agile PLM. It's an acquisition that was kind of loosely connected to their ERP system. But the popularity of those last two, it was because of the popularity of the ERP platforms, not that they were real big PLM players. It's just that's kind of how a lot of people talked about it for a while. But in the late 2000s, the picture really started to change. I will say it. I think that the ERP-based PLMs fell out of favor a little, and we had a new player show up, right? So that was Aras. That's when we really started to see this sort of 3+1 conversation. A lot of people may wonder about Autodesk, right? That they've always been out of the conversation since the Carl Bass, nobody needs PLM rant that he had. But anyway, I digress.
Yes.
That was sort of the background, right? But then in the late 2010s, cloud PLM solutions.
Eisner, man.
What's that? Oh,
Eisner and Partner. That was the other big acquisition by Oracle, right?
Absolutely, and that was actually a great product. But
it still is. Martin's
yeah. So, and you're right. It's just I don't think that one, didn't seem to have as much traction, but it kept that 3+2 alive to some degree. You're right.
Well, I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, but anyway, I think where I was headed with that is late 2010s, we get to cloud PLM shows up, right, and now the market really starts to shift a little bit in terms of the conversation. I don't know about in terms of volume, but it's also, pushing some of the traditional vendors to do some things differently too. But we start to hear new names like Propel and OpenBOM and Duro. And we always had Arena, so I don't want to forget them, right? Bomb.com and turning into Arena. But in the late 2010s, we get these new players in the market. Now it's not suddenly a 3+1 conversation anymore, right? So there's even things like Autodesk did sort of get into it a little bit with, I can't remember who they acquired, but what became Fusion Manage.
But
the last one was Upchain, right? So they've sort of continued to stay in the market a little, but questionable how they fit also.
Well,
exactly.
Because they're really not taken seriously outside of BIM. They do have great manufacturing. Their CAM software inside of Inventor is very good, and the Fusion stuff. But
right.
In terms of enterprise BIM, as you said, I mean, once you say something like that, like Carl said, it's really hard to...
It's hard to walk that back.
In the bottle,
Yeah. So for me, that's sort of the backdrop of the industry. I know it's not comprehensive, but, and please keep shaping it, Fino, in terms of what you think that backdrop is. But where I want to go with that is our first question is I want to talk about what we think that frontier of innovation for PLM systems today looks like. And maybe I'm thinking mostly of the 3+1, right? Because the startups in the cloud, people, they're maybe doing their own thing. But just when you think about what's that cutting edge, what's that state of the art, what does that look like for PLM?
Well, I would say that obviously the biggest play at the moment is AI. And what are we going to do with it? It's been 2-3 years. And I've talked to most of the vendors or been to their conferences, so I've got a good grasp of what each of them is doing. If I go alphabetically, we'd have to start with Dassault and 3D Experience and Centric, because we have to remember they do have two PLM platforms. They announced earlier this year 3D Universes with a plus instead of the E, which was more of a science-based thing. It was more probably around the BioVia stuff than around the other stuff, whereas they've always had a bit, is it ML or AI? But, they've already had generative design and CATIA for a while. They have XShape, which is also generative design, which was the SolidWorks on the cloud thing. SolidWorks also has a generative advisor assistant built in. And Centric has some AI-driven planning and semantic stuff inside. So it's not... Their story is a bit fuzzy. In fact, if you saw the Forrester report, they got dinged really hard on strategy because their roadmaps are iffy. They do talk about generative experiences. So they're going to have this contextual agentic AI with virtual companions, cross-discipline agents with coordination, which is similar to what PTC was talking about as well, and some AI-powered CPQ automation as well. And they want to go, they're trying to get people to coin the term full virtual twin as a service. Well, first of all, nobody says virtual twin except for Dassault. It's digital twin, but...
I will say, this is a total side topic, but there's an interesting point there because we've had a lot of conversations on the podcast about digital twin. And the one that I think is interesting is a lot of people will come on the podcast and feel very strongly that you cannot have a digital twin until there's a physical instance. And that's where I found that virtual twin term interesting, is I'm like, okay, so what do you call a digital twin that you're trying to build before you have the physical instance? Okay, maybe virtual twin's not a bad word for that. I don't know if that's quite what Dassault means, but I get your point.
Well, I think they're just trying to claim the name before someone else does. Like, Bernard always said he invented PLM. I think it was probably not even Peter, I think it was Ed Miller that created it personally.
Right.
But that's just, who knows who did it. Yeah. So I'd say that on one hand, Dassault has this 3D Experience platform. They do have the industry, probably the industry leading story in terms of a unified platform where they really do have not the entire portfolio, but a good percentage of portfolio on the same user experience with the same paradigm and everything, which is good. But so far, the AI stuff has been sort of low key, or they haven't done any really huge announcements. Now, that they're aligned with Mistral.ai, the French OpenAI. So that's interesting, and they've made recent acquisitions in AI, right? They bought up Proxim, they bought NeuroDB, which you wanted to ask me later about graph databases. They bought one.
Yeah.
Of course, they also own Exalead, which is an index.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're doing a lot of stuff, but so far the communication has been a bit, a bit vague.
So I want to summarize something I see there and get your perspective on it, because I might be all wet. But when I think about sometimes the strength of Dassault and that cutting edge point, a lot of times for me, it's they're acquiring things that they're putting together that immediately when they acquire them, I'm like, why? I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense to me. But then over time, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, there's a piece they're filling in, like that scientific platform point you made a second ago. Like there were a bunch of acquisitions. I'm like, I don't get it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, they're looking at material science down at the chemical level. Okay, now I see how it all fits. So that, I wonder if that's some of it, but again, I don't know. Am I seeing something there?
No, I think you're right. They do a lot of tuck-in, lots and lots of small tuck-in acquisitions rather than, they do the huge ones, but they usually do the huge ones when they're going after a new market or a new industry, like metadata, BioVia.
Right.
But they do hundreds, you can see my infographic, but there's, literally, I don't know if it's hundreds, but dozens of smaller ones that are just filling in some tech gap where they can expand CATIA and Innovia and everything. Because I think, to answer part of your question in terms of the frontier, the thing about PLM is that its definition is moving, right? We started just
that's true
managing CAD files, and then we're like, okay, what about change management, and what about configuration management? And by the way, there's requirements. And the definition of PLM is walking all over the definition of MES and ERP, and even some attempts have been to walk over the feet of CRM as well. So I think that's one of the dynamics. I would say that Dassault has, I'd say one danger, though. I don't know if you guys saw that there was talk of Apple acquiring Mistral.
Oh.
There was talk of that. It would be a huge acquisition by Apple, but, Apple is so far behind. Siri is just, Apple Intelligence as well, a bit of an oxymoron at this point. They've been ahead on so many things, but they're not ahead on the AI point.
No.
So I think that would be a bad move for Dassault, because I don't see Dassault leaving the back door, giving them the backdoor key so they can go mess around with Siri, right? So we'll see.
Can't trust Siri.
So that's what I could say about Dassault. In terms of PTC, so PTC, I was saying when we were preparing the call, they canceled LiveWorks, and that was a big deal. People were not happy about that. Neil has no PLM background, so it's been hard of a transition for them. I think those are some of the reasons why they also slid off to the left on the Forrester diagram, that they were not in the leaders; they were more in the top contenders kind of thing. That being said, usually they do all their announcements at LiveWorks. So you go there and you get the updates. There was no LiveWorks. So Whoever ended up in Salt Lake City to see their Fast and Furious thing got to see the roadmaps. And I asked PTC, I asked John Hirschtick and Steve Dertine. They were too busy, but they gave me Ayora Barry is the guy doing AI for PTC. He's very good. He sent me presentations. I couldn't talk to him, but he gave me his presentation he did at Salt Lake City at this Fast and Furious show. They do have a strategy. They have a nice framework, which they call advise, assist, and automate in terms of the agency you give to your AI. Is it just there to help you understand something of the documentation or your internal documentation inside of Windchill? Or is it there to actually perform a task? Or is it automating a process or a series of process or workflow? And so inside of Windchill today, they already have some chat and search on the documentation, same as Siemens, as we'll see in a minute. Codebeamer is already able to create test cases based on requirements. So it's able to already read the requirement and say, here, I think you need to do these tests. That's pretty cool. And Onshape has this design advisor. And there's also, I highly recommend everybody go look at do a little YouTube search on Leo AI Onshape. So this relatively small San Francisco-based AI company did their own advisor on top of Onshape. Even John Hirschtick told me he actually learned stuff about Onshape, and this is the guy who created Onshape. So I found that super impressive.
That's something, yeah.
That is interesting.
So that's where they are today. They already have some AI stuff. They're looking at going towards agent dashboards and multi-agent orchestration. So I think that's rather unique. You guys just aligned with Propel. Congratulations. Nice job. I talked to them also this week. Propel has agents, but I think PTC is the only one I've seen talking about the orchestration of multiple agents to do a task. Like, I'm going to have an agent that's going to be specifically understanding service lifecycle management, the more the service max stuff. And I have another one understanding requirements or ALM, and another one that's purely BOM and PLM. And I'll be able to ask questions of those and eventually, join those up into a more automate kind of workflow, which will be pretty nice.
Yeah, that's an interesting one that you're bringing up, Fino, because I as I listen to all this and I think about what people are doing, I think about how these fit in the larger enterprise. And as big enterprises are working on their own AI projects, I think to myself, I'm like, well, are you going to want to use the one that's specific to your PLM or your tools? And particularly if you're in a heterogeneous environment, how's that going to work? But that idea of sort of modular ones that could talk to each other, that's interesting.
I mean, there are very different languages, right? So that would be interesting how they're going to bring that together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the protocol is going to be MCP, the basic kind of thing. But, well, if I jump ahead to what I was going to say about Duro, I talked to Michael Core, the founder of Duro as well. Duro rewrote their entire application with AI. They had spent 5 years working on the original Duro, and I think they did the new one in like 9 months. Okay, they already learned some stuff when they built the first Duro, but using AI to build it, and his approach is more like, I want to, people are going to use bespoke apps no matter what. So my first priority is that there'll be sort of APIs and people can build these bespoke apps to do what they need to do, kind of thing, which I thought was another interesting approach.
That is interesting.
But he was saying, I'm trying to draw it back to my original point. He was saying what's interesting about AI is that it should be able to do all the integrations. I should never longer have to spend all this money on how do I connect system A to system B. It's just, you tell the AI, here's the APIs on one side, here's the APIs on the other. Come back in 5 minutes and tell me how to connect them, because I shouldn't be paying billions of dollars for that. That's something AI can figure it out. It can figure out from the data model, So he thinks that that's the way it should work, and I agree.
That's an interesting one. That's one I'll put a pin in, and we might come back to, because I find that one fascinating.
Let me throw out another idea. So we had this. There was a great conference in Jerez, Spain, a couple of months ago with Share PLM. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Friends of mine, they did a fantastic conference, and we had this AI breakout. And an AI breakout was kind of fun. It was with Rob Ferroni, the PLM plumber. You got to have him on as well sometime. But we in my subgroup, we were talking, and then we realized, what we need is the devil's advocate agent. We need the agent that says, you guys are all full of it. Yeah. Come back when you can actually prove what you're talking about, because I don't believe you. You just need that one agent that's always like, no, you give me proof, otherwise I don't believe you, because otherwise you end up with, you can never be fully confident.
I love it. It's a simple agent to write, right? Show me citations.
Yeah. I don't believe you.
All right.
I'll call it the Maimonides. That'll be my patented name. The Maimonides one. So, in terms of long-range roadmap, PTC was talking about this cross-product agentic workflow, right? If they have all these agents, they just join them up, and now they can do automation stuff. So that's the PTC story. The only problem with PTC is they don't have a digital thread fabric, right? What are they using behind the scenes? They don't have Mendix. They don't have. So I'm not sure how they do that, other than maybe they just use the agents as the thread, but it still seems that there's something missing there in terms of a backplane. But
that kind of fits that Duro theory, right? Just let the AI integrate it all.
Yeah, but then how do you make sure that digital thread is really robust and continuous? Then you're really on this continuous thread that's all over the place. Well, which made me want to talk about, that'll be a part. Later on, let's talk about systems of record, system of engagement, system of insight in the age of AI, but that's later on. So Siemens, I went to the Siemens Realize conference in Amsterdam. Interesting event. Good speakers. It's not like a high energy event. It's not like Aras where everybody's
rock star, punk rockers. Let's do it. Yeah, man.
That being said, people are very happy, and once you're you sort of like that old adage about IBM, no one gets fired by buying software from Siemens DISW, right? I mean, the stuff works. Now, if you dig a little bit, you find also they've got a problem with hundreds of databases all disconnected, but and they use either Team Center's active workspace to sort of throw up apps, bespoke apps, or Mendix to do that. In terms of, that's so they had a nice presentation on Team Center X. So I understood that Team Center X has several, basically is on AWS until you pay the premium version, and that one you can have on Azure, which means that your AI is AWS AI, and then suddenly if you're paying the big bucks, then you can use the Azure AI. Sort of the same problem that PTC has, right? Because their velocity stack on Shape Arena is AWS, and the Windchill Plus stack, the digital thread stack, is all Azure. So there's always this multi-cloud issue. So in terms of what they have today, so you may or may not know, but Siemens did this rebranding. Everything now is accelerator with an X, starting with the letter X, not with the A, just accelerator. And they just use that as a kind of a bucket for anything that's on the cloud.
Okay.
But then it ends up being sort of the cloud and the on-prem, but Team Center or whatever. But it includes Team Center Capital, which is the mentor graphics stuff. It includes Ops Center, Sim Center, and they announced Design Center, which basically is NX and Solid Edge in terms of designing.
Taking a page out of the Dassault book, right? Like, it's all on the platform, and I got you.
And since I have the center or the IA, so now instead of IA, they're just putting center on the end of it.
There you go.
So they have an industrial co-pilot. So they have some, and basically on the advice level, if we look at that PTC classification, and so they can already, I think it released on 2506, so the June release of Team Center. Already you can look at the documentation that's inside of Team Center and talk to it. Well, search across all the documents and then in one document ask questions to it. So, the classic application. They have some workflow agents that they're using with Mendix. So Mendix is able to use AI to generate its low-code stuff and then use that to do a little bit of workflow and a little bit of automation. They said that they were trying to come out with some BOM. So I think some limited BOM things came out in June, but they're coming out with more in December. They wanted to have more end-to-end workflow, but that's going to be end of the year kind of thing. They also wanted to create a marketplace like PTC wants to do, to put in third parties and a bit of learning and continuous improvement. I was a little underwhelmed. I thought there would be more to the announcement, but I think that's the Siemens thing, though. They don't like the big stuff. They like to just do it slowly, make sure it works, add a little bit more so that their customers aren't, jostled too much and feel
chip away at it, make it pragmatic.
That's the German precision.
The bigger picture would be the cross-ecosystem agent market with open partner and extensions and end-to-end self-optimizing autonomous workflows. That was what they said. So that's kind of cool. So Propel, I talked to Tom and Eric and Aaron over there. And they showed me basically, Propel is built on top of the Salesforce platform. Right. Salesforce has an agentic framework called Agent Force. So they have probably the most integrated one because it's on top of their platform. They don't have to do anything. The only downside of that is if you don't like Salesforce, well, you might want to be using Propel because that's what you get. They do have some cool stuff, though. So they have this agentic framework that I give them credit for being the first vendor to say that they had agents because they came out before anybody else. But it actually is the one agent. There's not. They say it's several agents, but it's just the one. He just knows how to do a certain number of tasks. And there's this whole hierarchy of task. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was task, context, and action or something. Mm-hmm. And it's the framework that comes from Salesforce. It's not a Propel thing. It's a Salesforce thing. So if you really want to understand what Propel is doing, you got to read the documentation of Agent Force, and that's basically the Propel one. But they basically already have role-based analytics, some semantic workflow guidance. They want to add more on change management and understanding the reason for a change in order. What they did show me on the demo that was really cool was they could have the as designed, as built, as serviced all on one page. Okay. So that the service person who's not very technical would have all the information in one shot. So they do a better job because they have the Salesforce platform to have a real digital thread that really is the same information coming from a single data source. So that was pretty nice.
And of course, that's powerful, like you said. Like if you're leveraging that AI that's coming out of the platform as well, it's going to be a short putt to get to because that sort of cross information analysis, information, that kind of thing. So it's interesting.
As long as you're happy to limit yourself to Salesforce and you don't have stuff anywhere else.
Well, this is true. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's good. And I think they've got a good model and it looks really nice. I think they're doing a fantastic job. And of course, their growth is insane. Very quickly, Autodesk. Well, it's Autodesk. They've got co-pilots here and there.
Don't get any respect.
But they're like I said, they're pretty much a BIM player, and they do some good stuff in manufacturing. But in terms of big PLM, I mean, they might be a good mid-market alternative, but I don't see them, showing up at Boeing or Airbus and kicking DS out anytime soon.
Do you see any disruptors coming in, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. I think that. I think I have to say Aras. I didn't get to talk about.
I was going to say we hadn't gotten to Aras. I'm like, before we get to disruptors, or maybe
Aras,
they are.
well,
Maybe they are the disruptor.
Aras popped up to the very top of the Forrester thing, and
I saw that. Congratulations to them. Yes.
yeah. Well, if you see my webcast I recorded yesterday with Josh Epstein, the CMO of Aras, he gave some. I talked to George just after he released it, George Laurie of Forrester. So I gave some insight into how George creates the report, and then Josh was able to bounce off that in terms of the stuff that Aras was doing that got recognized. So I would say that Aras has been disruptive in the fact that they were probably the first one to start talking about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, in the context of PLM, because they have a RAG augmented chatbot in order to look at product data. They have some AI-assisted semantic searching. They have a low-code system called Innovator Edge that allows you to create applications directly on the data model. All that is because they released, I think, last year, the configurable web services. So a really easy way of taking any data inside of Aras and building an app or a portal for suppliers, for example, which is cool. They're working on an agentic AI. Already, in fact, in the ecosystem, this guy Dan Theoden, if you look him up on LinkedIn, he's already put Aras inside an MCP, which is kind of cool.
That's one of the things I like about Aras' approach, right? Is again, it comes back to their roots of being open source and that sort of open community, right? Like I did a webinar with Rick Razor and somebody from Microsoft and Aras a while back, right? And he's one of that. Rick was in that ecosystem doing some of that AI work, right? The semantic search and that kind of thing. But it's fun to see, like, oh yeah, well we got Dan over here doing MCP around Aras, we got Rick over here doing this, and you got Aras doing that. Like, so you see these innovations coming from a lot of directions.
And what's interesting about Aras is they don't mind, they don't mind playing with the other kids. If Siemens or Dassault is already in the playground, they don't care. They're just, hey, we're going to create a digital thread and connect the dots for you. So I think that's really cool. And then they've got they're looking at even more autonomous agents and stuff to do root cause analysis, supply chain disruption things. So pretty interesting stuff, good stuff coming down. But to answer your question, I think that there is a very, very active startup market. I've been studying it, actually. I've created I started a watch list. I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn, but I created a DI10, a Design Intelligence 10, and Factory Futures 10. So Design Intelligence more CAD, engineering simulation, and Factory Futures more PLM, MES, IoT.
Okay.
And if I just look at the PLM space in my spreadsheet here, I have about 10 vendors. So there's OpenBOM and Duro and Propel, but I also have Alitic, Product Flow, VibeIQ, Brian Lindauer's new company, Prism. There's a Japanese one by a company called Things Inc. that looks really nice. So I think, there's a lot of disruption coming out there. I think that people are some customers are a bit fed up with the siloed approach, and once you get into one of those, the big three, you're sort of stuck inside the big three. They might be leading edge on some things and really behind on the others, and you just have to wait till they catch up. And people don't want to wait. And you've got this huge infrastructure of these awesome startups doing really, really amazing things. Like that there's now meshless FEM.
Wow. Okay.
That's
There's a company called Intech Software that supplies several other companies on my list that does meshless FEM. I have one that I'm going to have a podcast on the 23rd of September, Quantient. It's a Finnish company doing quantum computing for computational fluid dynamics.
So this is a great one, right? And this is really what I was getting at about that frontiers of PLM question, right? You're kind of highlighting some of those things. It's not just AI. Right? There's other stuff. There's quantum computing. Like I remember when quantum computing popped up, 4 or 5 years ago, everybody's like, well, this is going to be really cool one day. I will admit, I'm still trying to get my head around exactly how that's going to apply. But I get the point that, it's a different kind of computing. It's going to give us different vectors to answers. So, thinking about how it's going to apply and seeing it pop up, that's where I think we need to watch this AI hype. It's hype, and there's going to be a lot of good stuff, but don't let us miss something else that's coming up, right?
Yeah, and quantum is one of those things. Maybe 2-3 years ago, I might have been more enthusiastic on blockchain, but I think it's deservedly got a bad rep because of a lot of the misuses of it by various celebrities and underground organizations.
Yeah,
I think that the use of of a distributed ledger would be an excellent way to do BOM
Supply
on a
chain.
supply chain. Well, I would say the BOM. I would say if everybody was on the same blockchain, the BOM would just be a blockchain, and I would just have my piece of the BOM and my contribution, and it would just be this big blockchain. The problem is everybody has to have the same stuff, and it's still pretty expensive. And
I saw a really interesting use case around that in the defense industry, and I guess it was really coming from aerospace, but part provenance, right? You put those two things together, not just the theoretical BOM, but the digital twin side of it. Like, well, what material did this come from? Well, when you're talking blockchain and the whole supply chain, suddenly it's like, that data just lives and grows and grows and grows, and that's what people want. But again, I don't see the killer app yet.
I don't see the killer app. That's the thing. It's generated lots of press, but that one is definitely on the wrong side of the hype curve at this point, right?
I'm going to jump in here because I think I've got another list of several questions that I wanted to get to, and it's like we're 30 minutes in. We're never going to get to this stuff. We're going to have to do this again. But I think this was
have a part 2.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't want to cut the conversation short. I just wanted to point out, there's more to this. But I want to say, is there anything that we've missed that we didn't talk about in terms of that frontier, right, and the disruption and that kind of thing? Just before we close this one out, stuff that you want to highlight.
If I continue on these awesome startups, there's also a new modeler that came from Intop, from Blake Quarter, who was one of the creators of Space Claim, right? So he was at the beginning. So Blake's
pre-Ansys, he was at Space Claim and founded that, right?
They have this amazing implicit design. So a new modeler, the first new modeler in quite a while, from a kernel point of view, there was sub-D, but sub-D is more on the NURB surfacing. So I think that's super exciting. I think that there's a lot of excellent workflow products as well that are coming out, like Synera has a really inventive solution there. I talked to them today. I'll probably do a webcast with them. There's another one too. I talked to this. I didn't realize how difficult the calculations were when you're talking about actual contact between two surfaces. You have, when you touch just one edge of two facets, but when you're doing two surfaces, so there's a startup called C Infinity that is doing those calculations now, which is pretty awesome. So I think that what the reflection I had was that I read this book about Theodore Diesel, and did you know that the first diesel engines were actually running on vegetable oil?
That's fascinating.
That destroyed the whole thing. But originally, Theodore Diesel's vision was these engines are for us, the normal people, and they run clean and they don't destroy the environment. That was his entire vision. And anyway, you have to read the book. It's a good book.
Talk about full circle, right? Sustainable aviation fuel, back to the beginning, right? That's amazing.
Well, what's interesting, what struck me on reading that book is how the manufacturing processes before the Industrial Revolution, like in the 17th to 18th century, could only deal with wood. You didn't have alloys. You didn't have metallurgy yet. You could do steel to do, a sword, right? But you didn't have the technology, the manufacturing technology, to do much else. And that's what was a breakthrough for diesel, was being able to do much more complex manufacturing, even if it was only still on paper back in the day. But that was allowing him to get the precision he needed to build this engine. And what I learned from talking to Quanchen, I found it absolutely fascinating, is that we've been talking about fusion energy. Well, let me go back. That we have. I don't know if you guys watched the GTC with Jensen Huang when he introduced the Blackwell, and he said that in the future every factory will have an AI factory next to it, and that AI factory will have a nuclear power plant because of the power requirements. And I'm like, oh my God, fission plants everywhere? No way. Actually, there'll probably be a fusion plants. And when I was talking to
and it's going to be Back to the Future style, Mr. Fusion on top of your car, man.
So the thing is, did you know that the reason that we haven't been able to do fusion is because we cannot manufacture the geometries required to hold the fusion
to contain it
static in one place for the fusion thing to happen. Now with AI and generative design, we can finally do those insane geometries that allow us to stabilize the plasma inside the electromagnetic field and have fusion happen. So we might see in our lifetimes usable fusion. And that's going to be thanks to AI, generative design, CAD, PLM, and it's going to be pretty awesome stuff. So I think that's one of the coolest things that I learned recently.
That's great. I got to jump in here, though, gentlemen, and I hate to be the referee of a good conversation because I'm always the bad guy. But
not bad guy. You're just setting us up to start again later. That's all.
Yeah. Well, clearly we have a lot more to talk about with Fino. I think, what did we get to? One question, I think.
Yeah. I think we did.
Maybe
It was
two.
a good one.
We might go maybe
We
two.
haven't talked about the economic business models.
Yeah, but
We'll come back to that one.
But we put a pin in like 3 or 4 other ideas throughout this
Yeah.
conversation. So
I love it.
So we want to have you back. If that's good for you. We can schedule another time to have one of these conversations and continue this fascinating discussion. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to see what you put together for a summary for us today.
Yeah, so let me try. I made some notes. We'll see how I do, Fino, and jump in when I miss something. But I think, really, we gave a little bit of background, right? We try to frame this as, hey, let's talk about the cutting edge. Let's talk about the frontier. So with that history, kind of some of who those players are, and then what's shifting with the new cloud players and startups, we went back to the old school, right? Talked about those folks, and I'll just kind of run down what I saw as the list and summarize what I heard. DS, their frontier is about acquisitions that they kind of tuck in, things that they do organically. They're adding out little bits and pieces, right, around AI and things, and it's coming in different areas of the platform and the app. It's a little bit similar to what we talked about with Siemens, right? I won't say it's the same strategy, but it's the same thing where you see things pop up that seem pragmatic to solve a certain problem. I wouldn't call it, cutting edge or revolutionary. I think on the PTC side, we see something a little different, right? They've got a framework. Now, maybe their challenge is some of that backbone of what they're operating on, but maybe it's actually a different strategy altogether, right? The ability to have these individual agents that are going to work on certain parts of things and a framework about that advise, assist, automate sort of, way to look at things and how they do stuff. Then you got people like Duro. You mentioned them. We didn't get deep into it, but the idea that they're sort of AI first and then API first, right? Trying to make it so that everything's accessible and things can be agents on top of the platform. And that's kind of how they're looking at it. And also thinking that integration happens very much through AI. That's one of those pins I want to come back to. I think Aras we talked about as being a big innovator in this space, right? And I don't know if I'm right or not when I say that the community maybe is contributing to some of why that is, but you mentioned a couple of things that are big deals in that space. They were first talking about RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation. They also have somebody outside the core Aras working on MCP, right? The Model Context Protocol thing coming from Anthropic to let AI speak to Aras and use it, that kind of thing. See, who else did we talk about? We talked about Propel, right? And their approach being more, Salesforce has AI, so therefore Propel has AI. Okay, now they're applying it to what you're doing inside of Propel. Maybe that's a for better or for worse kind of thing. Yeah, it's there, and you're leveraging the scale of Salesforce, but at the same time, it's sort of operating on what data you've got in Salesforce and Propel, and kind of what their capabilities are. Then you got Autodesk. Again, some activity, some things that they're working on, but there's nothing there to really note as like, oh, well, that's interesting. They're doing that. That's, nothing that's super compelling, but of course they're trying to keep up. And then the other part I'll mention is all the new innovations and startups. So I really appreciated this, right? The fact that you mentioned, quantum computing, new kernels, new geometry engines, things that are really going on. There's still startup activity beyond AI. And that's the thing we should all take away, right? That there's more to this frontier PLM than just AI. That's getting all the hype, it's getting all the attention, and there are things to pay attention to there. They're real, but there are other things that we should think about. So out of the stuff we talked about, what did I miss, Fino, that we should highlight for the audience in the chunk of what we talked about today?
Well, Siemens, you didn't mention Siemens in your roundup. So
Okay.
Siemens is more steady as you go. We're adding the AI stuff over time.
Sorry, I thought I was comparing them to Dassault, but yeah, I've kind of skipped and kind of bundled them together. But I think that does it feel a little bit similar to you, what the two of them are doing, or no?
I think that, because Dassault looks like it's more of a science approach.
We're
talking about the universe is very scientific, whereas the Siemens is more operational, manufacturing, enginering.
That's a good difference to draw.
Rubber hits the road kind of thing.
Okay.
If I can just self-promote, I'll do this on the 23rd of September. I'll be interviewing Quantient, the quantum startup, but I'm going to do a whole series of these in the fall, and I'm going to try to put two startups together that are both using AI to create their software. So explain how they used AI to do it, then how did their perception of AI changed as they were using AI to do it, and then when they go into a customer who's at some level of data maturity, how is the introduction of this new AI-powered software, how does that move the bar for the actual customer using it? So I think that'll bring a lot of insights into some of the dynamics here.
That should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that sounds
people should watch out for that.
That's a pitch. The 10th of September, I'll have mentioned the Forrester report. I'll have George, but also Jim Brown and Christine Longwell of SimData and Oleg, of course, of OpenBOM and Beyond PLM, with my other panelists, Liz Graham, Rob Ferroni, and Jos Voskuil, and we'll be talking about what are analysts, what do they do, why are they, why do we even listen to them, and what
is that going to be 3 hours, Fino, or is that going to be? Got to give everyone a chance. Yeah, that's great. That looks like a really good one.
It's been really exciting. I hope that we can get together in the fall again and finish that last question about.
Yeah,
I have stuff to say about the new economic models that we're going to need for this new stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, thank
I want
you
to pick
so
up
much.
on that one. That'll be fun.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Fino, for your time today. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Pleasure.
And it was a lot of fun talking about.
You guys were a lot of fun. We'll have to do this on a regular basis. I think.
Yeah, that'd
like
be great.
it.
Yeah. And thanks, Jonathan, for helping me along here today.
Absolutely.
And with everybody, we appreciate you joining us, and we encourage you to continue to listen to our episodes. And make sure you look up Fino on LinkedIn. He's got, as we said, a great set of content, and he's some really interesting events coming up. So make sure you follow and register for those. With that, we will close out today, and we encourage everyone to make sure you stay sharp.
Thanks,
Have a good one. Take care. Thanks for being here and listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with Razor Leaf. If you like this podcast, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or watch us on YouTube. If you have any questions for Fernando, please leave us a comment on our post, or just send us an email at podcast@razorleaf.com. Until next time, everybody, stay sharp.